Hi, Amanda. Long time no see.
Hi, Kimber. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here with you.
I love having you on. I'm always so excited to talk with you because I feel like you have so much insight. You work with, our customers day in and day out. So today we're talking about the changes that Meta made to their fundraising tools. So as some of you may know, if you've been watching us before on lives, Amanda has joined us a lot of times, but she is our Director of Customer Success at Stellar WP, and she oversees the Give WP Customer Success team. She also uses her nonprofit expertise and WordPress superpowers to help folks worldwide make a bigger difference in their communities. On a personal note, Amanda really treasures spending time with her family, time in nature, studying and teaching yoga, and she's possibly obsessed with Beyonce. And by possibly, she's absolutely obsessed with Beyonce. Did you go to the tour?
I did. I was in Toronto in July.
That's so exciting. I'm sure you were just so excited. I need to see your fit though, so you'll need to send that to me.
Absolutely.
I am Camber. If you haven't been here before, I'm the product marketing manager at Stellar WP, and I work with Give WP, the product team. I'm passionate about creating good in the world, and I run my own nonprofit in the sports space. I live in South Florida, which is actually very nice today. And I love spending time with my partner and my children, and I drink way more Diet Coke than I should. So that's everything you need to know about me. A couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started. This is being recorded. So if for whatever reason you want to revisit this, it will be on YouTube and Facebook immediately after this for replay. The chat will also be available for anyone who needs to maybe scroll through, catch a couple links that are coming through, or read the chat. That will also be available. As far as chat goes, that's where we're going to drop any questions that you have. And towards the end of the conversation, we will answer those. So please feel free to drop questions in the chat. I know that there's a lot of information that we are going to cover today. So I guess let's get into it because there's a lot to talk about, Amanda.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
I am too. Okay, so first things first, what we're talking about are the changes to the fundraising tools on Meta platforms. So Meta platforms are Facebook and Instagram specifically. We're going to go through these fundamental changes individually and kind of discuss their meaning and how to adapt to them. But before we get started with that, the first thing I need to tell anyone watching, because I don't want anyone to not hear this part, is how absolutely crucial it is to take action immediately if you rely on Facebook for any fundraising, whether it's just supplemental or you use Facebook or Instagram primarily for your fundraising. You must accept the updated charitable donation terms and switch to PayPal Giving Fund by October 31st, or you will lose access to fundraising tools on Meta platforms, which of course will disrupt your fundraising. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat where you can find more information about the terms and switching to PPGF. If you need that, that is, is that the right link? That is not the right link. Hold on one second. Typing is really hard in here. Okay, I'll get that in 1 second. But there is a pretty important piece of that, and you need to be doing that sooner rather than later. Okay, we're going to talk about PayPal Giving Fund first, which is, I think, one of the bigger changes that's a little bit harder to wrap your head around than some of the other things on the list today. So PayPal Giving Fund is a donor advised fund. And essentially what a DAF is that they are created to manage charitable donations on behalf of individuals, families, or organizations. Donations that benefit the US, UK, Canada, and Australia organizations will be exclusively processed through the PayPal Giving Fund, which means going forward that donations are actually going to PayPal Giving Fund, and then they grant funds to organizations through their donor advised fund. So there is no real guarantee that donations will make it to the intended organization. Instead, PPGF considers the donor's recommendation and then grants funds based on their own nonprofit certification policy. This partnership also changes a couple of other things, including payout timelines transaction reports, and donation receipts. So first, let's talk about how the PayPal Giving Fund, being the exclusive payment processor, impacts organizations that fundraise on Meta platforms.
Excuse me.
Go ahead. Sorry. So the first couple of things that we want to talk about are the payout timelines, which payouts are going to take much longer than they were with Meta Payments. So Meta Payments was previously processing, and you could expect your payouts in like 15 days or so. With PPGF now, your payouts are about 15 to 45 days. And if you're not enrolled with PPGF, they can take much longer, up to 90 days. Transaction reports will also change, which means Meta will no longer provide tax documentation. That will come from PPGF, and donation receipts are also going to come from PPGF. So they'll provide donors with official receipts. There's a couple of big things that I want to talk about there. And you and I were talking about this earlier, as far as the receipting goes and the transaction reports go, and then also the payout timelines. So what do we think that from a payout timeline specifically, how can we kind of combat that?
Yeah, it's super important to recognize for any kind of nonprofit strategy, because if you have certain deadlines for your campaigns or milestones, especially that you're communicating to your donor audience, you want to make sure that you're actually receiving those funds within an appropriate period of time to actually accomplish the goals that you're communicating to your community. So making sure that you have a good understanding of how long a payout might be if you are primarily accepting donations via Meta is going to be really important, because if it's going to take up to 45 days to receive your donations and more if you're not part of the PayPal Giving Fund, then that's really going to impact how you're able to communicate the impact you're having to your donors. So being able to make sure that that's a transparent communication between you and your audience is a very big thing to think about here.
Yeah. And the other two things I want to talk about are the transaction report and those and donation activities. So if you are enrolled with PPGF, they have, similar to our donor dashboard, they have a giving dashboard as well, where you can see donor information if they opt to share it with you. So you'll be able to see names, email addresses, donation amount, things like that. But if you're not part of PPGF, you don't get access to any of that information, and your payouts come much later than if you're enrolled. Not everyone wants to be enrolled with PayPal affiliated organizations. So there's some concern that those donations come in and you're running blind. You don't know who they came from, how to reach out and say thank you, how to bring them in as a recurring donor, which we're going to get to recurring donations in a minute. But how important is it for organizations to kind of own their donor data and be able to access that information so that they can reach out and kind of grow those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, that's the foundation, right? I mean, if we don't know who's giving to us, we can't identify any donor stories of who invests their time and energy in our organizations to then make decisions about how we're communicating with those folks, to further engage them, to ideally get them to become a recurring donor or a multiple giving donor over years to come. So if you don't know who your donor is, you don't really have a good foundation to work from. And just being able to identify who your donors are, to thank them. You want to make sure that you are actually making a relationship with the donors that are contributing to you, not just for the future planning, but for who's actually engaging with your organization right now. So that donor data, and just in terms of being transparent with how your donor data is being used, is a primary concern for a lot of donors that are going to invest in an organization. So if a lot of that is going to be unforeseen or uncertain with meta giving, then that's something that you want to make sure you're communicating with your donors.
Yeah, which that's one of the really good things about GiveWP, and I'm not sure that a ton of people know this or really realize that, is we don't know any of your donor data. We don't have access to that. We can't see who gives to you, what they give, anything. You are fully in charge of your donor data and ensuring that that information is secure. So adding in another organization, you have no idea really what could happen. It's out of your hands. So that's a really important thing to note. The other thing with PayPal Giving Fund is that it means there's been a return of payment processing fees to Meta platforms. So because Meta Payments no longer processes donations, they are no longer covering processing fees, which they have done since 2017. And I think they have covered more than $1 million in processing fees since then. So that is a pretty big deal. They will eventually roll out a fee recovery option that works similarly to our fee recovery add-on. But I think here, what I'm concerned about is how challenging this will be for nonprofit organizations to discuss with donors. So if you have a donor that's been exclusively giving to you through a Meta platform for 3 years, they have never paid a processing fee in that entire time. They don't know what a processing fee is. They don't understand that it's coming out of their donation to you, that you aren't getting the full amount. So how do we go about, encouraging organizations to engage with and educate donors on the new fee structure and how important it is to ensure that they understand what the fees mean and how important it is to cover them? Like, what are some of the best ways for us to do that?
Absolutely. I think with all these changes, it really does remind us that when we're using any kind of third-party platform, we're at the mercy of the policy changes and the technology changes that happen on those platforms.
And the
So
algorithm shift.
exactly, exactly. So this is actually a good time to, if you're going to communicate with your donors something, maybe it's time for you to also make a decision around what is the future of your giving strategy
Mhm.
for the next 5 to 10 years, and what is a sustainable choice that you can make so that as you're making sweeping communications to your donors, that it is more something that you can stand by for years to
Mhm.
come, and that feels like you can confidently go into it feeling like, yes, this is the right move for us. And hey, now there are processing fees on Meta platforms, and here's why.
Mhm.
And here's what we're doing about it. We're actually going to decide to, in addition to accepting donations because it's accessible on Meta, because some folks still want to do that, if you want to avoid the processing fee and make sure your donation is being pushed forward as much as possible to the organization, please donate on our website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the important part. And even going all the way back to like talking about the donor data and things like that, having your own land, as we say, is really important because it means you can control everything. You're not subject to different shifts in industries and technologies and the algorithm and who's going to see your post and who's not. Everything is on your site. You own it. And it also means that you're able to communicate with donors through multiple channels. So you're not just communicating with them on social media, but you're also able to communicate these changes, what you're doing to have a sustainable fundraising foundation through email, through social media, through your website, through a blog, through all these different ways. And so that's really important. So not only are we going to educate them on fee recovery, we're also going to educate them on a really wild change to Meta, which is that they stopped supporting recurring donations and campaigns on September 15th. So we're going to get into a little bit nitty gritty on that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about how important recurring donations are to fundraising. They are the foundation of fundraising. So, Amanda, just kind of talk to us a little bit about why that is so impactful for nonprofit organizations that do rely on Facebook and what it means that recurring donations are no longer available.
Absolutely. I mean, for any growing fundraising strategy, recurring donations are that bedrock of
Mhm.
any strategy. That is your goal for getting your donors to be engaged with your organization over a long period of time. It really makes that relationship with your donor stronger, helps you understand who your donor is and who your benefactors are, like how all that relationship is connected so that you can make really powerful, impactful content on your website
Mhm.
and translate the benefits that you're providing to your community to
Mhm.
the people that are contributing to make that happen.
Mhm.
That recurring donor experience is crucial to that whole experience and understanding your audience. And just on average, an average recurring donor will give 42% more in 1 year than those who give one-time gifts. And
Mhm.
especially when we're thinking about the younger generations or just millennial and Gen Zers, they're not really ready to give big donations at one time. They
Mhm.
want to like make donations, small donations monthly
Yeah.
over a certain period of time, especially if you're able to set up milestones and goals throughout the year. If you can
Mhm.
really translate what $50 a month would do, even $5 a month, like
Mhm.
that is a really impactful thing that somebody can do that's accessible to them. And if it's just one-time donations that they see as an option, they might be turned off and say, well, I can't, I'm not there, I'm not the donor they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point just about the, the millennials and Gen Zers is, I think when you think about a one-time donation and you're like, well, I can really only afford $10 right now. I think there's this idea that it's not going to help. It's not going to do anything. It's not enough. It's not impactful. But, if you really drive home how much it adds up over time, but then you also kind of frame it as this community of like, we have 100 people in our recurring donations program who are giving every month. So it's not just you giving $10 a month. There's 50 other people like you also giving $10 a month. So you guys are moving in a community to really impact how our organization is funded.
Mm-hmm.
And it also allows us to have a very solid bedrock of foundations. Like we can almost always count on this amount of money to be coming in every single month. So while $10 one time may not seem like a lot, $120 times 50 over the course of a year is a significant amount of money. So I think making sure you're kind of moving in that, educate, inspire, make sure you're building a community kind of way is super important to recurring donations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even if they are coming from a Meta platform, you want to be able to engage with them
Mhm.
on your website ultimately. Like maybe that's the introduction relationship that you have with them because it is how they found you. And that there's nothing wrong with that. Like that still should be a tool that you're utilizing, but you do need to be in the know of how you then access that donor information and translate communicating to those folks to ultimately get them to go to your website, whether they're
Mhm.
engaging with your social media content, or they made a contribution and you're following up somehow.
Yeah. And so, just to kind of pull in one more piece of the recurring donations change, which is Meta does hope to one day bring that back. Right now, it's not supported, and there's no timeline for it to be supported. So it's not enough to sit on your laurels and wait for Mark Zuckerberg to decide that we're going to bring back recurring donations. You really do have to make some moves in order to do that. So how do our organizations, that do use Facebook or they do have recurring donations available on Facebook, how do they combat this change, and kind of create a way to ensure that those people that were recurring donors on Facebook are still able to support them in another way?
Yeah, and it really is going to require some careful consideration of what your next step looks like.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, I would be right now, like already should have a place for people to accept recurring. You should be able to have your donors be able to make a recurring donation directly on your website and get them transitioned immediately. Communicate with them, start now,
Yeah.
getting them in the know of like, hey, as of October 31st, like recurring donations were no longer a thing. So with Meta,
Mhm.
so we want to make sure that we have a transition plan and a place to send those folks to make sure that they can continue that relationship because that is such a vulnerable time right now. Like if the recurring donation is going to stop, you're not going to be expecting that again the next month or weeks coming.
Mhm.
You want to make sure that you have a direct way of like, oh, we still would love your support. Here's how your support is
Mhm.
impacting our organization. Here how it has been impacting our organization. Please continue your support, and here's how you can do so in the ways that it is benefiting us more by doing it through our website because of
Mhm.
the processing fees that you can cover, the ability to receive a tax deductible receipt
Mhm.
directly from our organization and not from the PayPal giving fund through Facebook for Meta.
Yeah.
Being able to then communicate with your donors impact statements right after they make a contribution by customizing the email interactions that you have with them,
Mhm.
and simply just being able to provide them with content on your own website, videos, images of your benefactors. Who are you supporting in your community and how are you communicating that to your
Mhm.
donors?
Yeah. And so you're talking about what we're talking about here is creating, if you don't already have one, an online donation site, or upgrading the one that you already do have and ensuring that you have a recurring donations option available, and moving folks from one platform to the other so that you don't lose anyone in the process, which is a big undertaking on its own. But there are lots of reasons that your own fundraising site is super important for your organization. Not only talking about what we are right now, but there are, bullet point after bullet point after bullet point of benefits to owning your own online donation site. So Amanda, can you tell us, just a couple of other benefits to that, what that kind of looks like, and why you should try to have your own site?
Absolutely. We touched on it time and time again here, but I think it bears repeating. Reducing the dependency on a third-party platform, especially one that you don't have direct control over your donation data. Like a tool like GiveWP, it's software that you download and put on your website. It's really, the software doesn't change unless you update it. And you want to have a relationship with a donation software that you trust the developers, the people that are supporting it, and you kind of have a vision of like, they're not going anywhere. They're sticking around, they're staying true to their mission. You know what I mean? I think that's really crucial. And that's where you can create like a trusting dependency on whatever platform you're using, because you do have to use something to accept donations. But a social media platform is a lot more volatile, I believe. There's a lot more change that can happen that's outside of your control. Whereas on your own website, you have a lot more control over what's going on and how people are interacting with how they're giving you money, supporting your organization.
Yeah. And that's, sorry to cut you off.
No.
I just wanted to touch kind of back on that when you're talking about, not having any control over the third-party platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, like TikTok. Not only do you not have control over them, but if their servers go down, you're out of luck. You can't do anything to fix that. You are at their mercy until they figure out how to get it fixed. Twitter just had a glitch the other day that made everyone think they were back in 1969. So, you never really know, and what is going to happen. And then you lose out on an entire day of donations. I think it was last year or maybe 2 years ago, there was like an internet-wide shutdown of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It was a nightmare, and they didn't get back. We couldn't even work. They didn't get back online for 6 hours. It was wild. So that kind of stuff just further illustrates why it is important to have, at the bare minimum, a place where people can go to make a donation that is not dependent on a social media platform, especially.
Totally. And that reminds me that, the donations you're actually receiving through Meta are also subject to how your organization is being understood by Meta, like the documents that you provide, all the information that you're communicating to Meta to confirm that your organization is eligible to receive donations. And if something changes in their policies that maybe isn't well communicated, or is communicated but maybe you missed, they have a right to stop giving you your donations. They have a right to refund donations, to distribute donations how they see fit. And that is something to be very, very cautious with.
A little wary of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, Jinx, you owe me a Diet Coke. So I want to make something really clear before we kind of, wrap up here, but we're not at all advocating for your organization to leave Facebook, to leave Instagram. It's really just more about diversifying your donation channels. So if you do rely heavily on Facebook for donations, you just want to ensure that you have an additional place for folks to go, that they have a site that they can visit and donate to, that you're texting them, and encouraging them to, text to give and give you a little bit that way. It's not about it's really, I just wanted to make it very clear. It's not about leaving these places behind, because they are a great supplement, but it's more about how do you not make Facebook the main place that your donations are coming from. Facebook is where you want people to learn about you. It's where you want to bring awareness to your organization, and then how you funnel people over to your own fundraising site where you are in charge. And you never have to wonder where your donations are going and whether or not they're going to make it to you, and why your donations are 90 days behind. So Amanda, just, we're going to wrap it up. We actually don't have any questions, which I think is wild. I had a million questions while I was kind of researching this stuff, but that's totally fine. Just share kind of your closing thoughts with us about these changes and how you see it, especially because you work with our customers day in and day out. I just kind of would be curious to hear your overall thoughts about it.
Absolutely. I mean, of all the folks that I communicate with on a day-to-day basis, they're typically under-resourced. They have a lot on their plate. They've got a lot going on. It's a lot to stay in the know of all these things. So it does remind me, and I am so grateful and proud of GiveWP because of the really like the stability that it can give and peace of mind that it can give people, because they do just have to stay on top of like one thing, their website, like where they're centrally making people come to accept donations. I get a lot of asks about how to accept donations on Facebook or other social media platforms. And I'm always recommending that, even if you are doing a strategy on social media, that you primarily are focusing on where you're doing so on your website, because that's where your storytelling is. That's where your heart is. That's where your donors should live, to understand your organization, to get to know you better, to benefit from whatever you have to provide to your community. There's so many ways to do that and to communicate your story outside of social media. Social media is just a little, the little like kind of drawing somebody in, like piquing interest. And if you can get donors that way, that's wonderful. But ideally, the primary focus is how you're investing your time and energy into something that's going to be sustainable and that's going to provide you stability over the years.
Yeah. The social media is a small piece of the fundraising pie.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel like we've had a good conversation here. We still don't have any questions, so we're just going to call it. If anyone does have questions that they think of later on, please feel free to reach out. You can use the contact form, or if you get an email from me, you can always just reply to that, and we will get it. Someone will get to you. So yeah, that's it. Amanda, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We are going to just wrap this up, folks. See you later.
Bye.